Is this thing on?
Hi, everyone. My name is Uche, the manager of Student Engagement Voice podcast, the voice of the students. With me today is Gerhard and Steve, and today we're going to talk about the Entrepreneurship Week and talk about the student enterprise at Spark. Please, Gerhard and Steve, welcome to the Voice podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Uche.
Please, can you tell us your role at SLC?
Absolutely, I can go first. So my name is Steve Janssens, and I am a project manager in the Innovation and Business Engagement department. It's a department that isn't. I don't think it's seen as much as some of the academic divisions, by students. But basically, the Innovation and Business Engagement department is really responsible for a lot of the external connections and a lot of the external activity and partnerships that happen between St. Lawrence College and businesses and organizations in the community.
Yeah, and I'm Gerhard Freinhofer. I'm a fourth-year BBA student at St. Lawrence College, and I'm also the project manager at Spark Creative Communications, St. Lawrence College's premier institutional student enterprise.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gerhard and Steve, for joining us once more. And today, like I said, we're going to discuss on student enterprise. So I want to ask Gerhard, why do you think student enterprise is important?
A great question, Uche. So before I dive into why student enterprise is important, I think it's good if we start the conversation by defining what is a student enterprise. So a student enterprise is a business typically run by a school that employs students to provide either the product or the service offering of that business. So for an example of this, I'll use Spark. So we're a marketing creative communications agency. We provide marketing and communication solutions to clients both within the college as well as in the external community. And we're basically powered by students such as myself who do all the work. Steve makes sure we keep it all on the rails and that we've got clients coming in. And a student enterprise can take several different models, which we'll discuss later. But why is it important? Well, for any of your listeners who are students who have wanted or were hoping to have a job within the field that they want to get hired in after graduation, but don't quite know how to build career-ready skills and practical projects outside of the classroom setting, student enterprise provides that opportunity where they get to work professionally, they get paid for it, in some models, for the work that they do for paying clients. So there's greater responsibility, there's greater accountability, and it's a real chance to take a lot of the learnings that you're getting in the classroom and apply it in a practical situation where the stakes are higher. And for a lot of the students that come through, often end up getting a far better both educational experience as well as a professional experience by doing that. So that's why listeners, that's why student enterprise is important to a student audience, as well as we can talk about later why it also has positive benefits for both the college as well as the broader community.
Awesome. Absolutely. That's really exciting to know that because when students are able to build their capacity within the student enterprise, they will be relevant. I mean, it's a life-changing experience, I think, for students who engage in these student enterprises. So I also want to find out if you mentioned about the models, right? The different models. So can you tell us the different models that you use in this student enterprise?
Yeah, so again, I'm just going to back up a little bit. The reason why we have these student enterprise models is based off research I did for John Conrad, who's the director of Innovation and Business Engagement here at the college. And Steve can talk about this a little bit more. But John, Steve, Bree, who's the creative director for Spark, who's currently on mat leave, as well as others within the Innovation and Business Engagement department, it was an idea they wanted to explore more, but didn't necessarily have the time or capacity to do so. And then decided to, when I started conversations with them, it was offered as, hey, this is something we'd like to explore more. Would you be interested in doing the research in this area? So I said yes, and as part of my internship, I did a lot of research around what is student enterprise, what does it look like, and is this something of value that the college could pursue? So in my research, I identified 3 different models of student enterprise. The first one I defined as an academic student enterprise. So this is effectively a school-run business that provides a service to either the college community or the broader community, that rather than paying the students financially for their work, they basically pay them with grades. So an example of this would be Dynamic Design Salon and Spa. So at the salon, it's a requirement for all hair and aesthetic students at the college to go through and do time there. So they get to work on paying clients. There's a lot of oversight and technicians, as well as the enterprise manager, a faculty member, who's making sure that no one's walking out with like half the head shaved and the other half not. But so the students do the work. However, rather than be paid for their time, because it's a requirement for their program, they're compensated with grades, as well as a chance to really practically practice the skills that they're getting. And for something like hairstyling, you have to practice somewhere. Like you can't just, like, there's only so many times you can cut a mannequin's hair before you need to get your hands on a real life person to practice. So that's an example of an academic enterprise. An institutional student enterprise, Spark being an example, is very similar to an academic. However, typically it's not tied to a specific program or department, and students are financially compensated for their work. So all the students that work at Spark, we come from a variety of different programs. We've got graphic design, marketing students. We had a music and multimedia student over the summer, UX design, so anything business and communications related. We all work together as a team, we learn from each other, we get paid for our work. So it's a fantastic part-time job that's really designed to work for a student. And then the third and final model of student enterprise would be the independent student enterprise. Now in this one, it's like you take Spark, but students are fully responsible for it, including the financial, like the business survival of the business. So students completely run it. They take full ownership for the business. However, the business is still technically owned by the school. So the student that founds it cannot take it with them after they graduate. It stays at the school. However, they're responsible for everything: signing contracts, getting clients, managing the books. It's an entrepreneur without necessarily owning the business per se. And if the enterprise fails to be financially viable, well, then it closes. It's both the lowest risk for the college to embark on from an enterprise standpoint, but at the same time can be seen as let's say the highest risk for the school as a whole, because there's no guarantee this enterprise will be sticking around from semester to semester if you happen to have bad management or COVID happens. So those are the 3 models. And in my research, I ended up doing a lot of interviews at St.LawrenceCollege, as well as with some external faculty members or administrative support at different schools who work in these different areas.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think really the distinction between, the independent student enterprise where the student runs everything and is responsible for the startup and maintenance is a little bit less common, especially in our backyard. But I think the big distinction between the first 2 student enterprises being academic and institutional really, to me, I think one of the real defining factors is that, the academic student enterprises are often guided by a set of required learning outcomes. So when you're, obviously when you're grading students, you need to have some sort of structure and some sort of, rule book for how you're going to create those grades or manage that. But with the institutional student enterprise, and again, Spark is sort of our flagship or premier student enterprise, so we'll kind of probably be using that as an example quite often. But with something like Spark, we're not bound to specific learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes that are generated are often a little bit less predictable, and the students are getting put into a position where it's not going to be, they're not going to get an outline of everything that's going to happen before they start. It's something where they're going to get into it. They're going to have to work with their team members to define what types of projects they want to work on, what types of clients they want to work with, and based on those interactions and that collaboration, the outcome often is generated off those events, right? So again, we're not compensating with grades in something like Spark or an academic student enterprise, but the students are coming here getting paid, and where we found the real benefit of that too is, students are coming in and they're treated as professionals from day one. So, a lot of student positions, it's very much like, okay, well, what's your, as a student, what are you going to get from this? And, and not to say that there isn't an element of that, but it's not our reason for being, really. So, so I think as part of that, you get the benefit of students really getting their educational experience and professional work experience at the same time. So a student who's engaged in one of these, institutional student enterprises is graduating with, possibly like 2 years of work experience in their field already, versus a student who is just graduating with just the academic component and then needing to go and start their professional work experience at that point.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback on one thing Steve said is like the students, they're getting their educational experience as well as their professional experience at the same time. And a lot of in the research that I did on student enterprise, there's a fair bit of research out there that shows that students that are employed in their field at the same time they study often end up with far better learning outcomes and like their GPA is higher than the comparative student who's not working in their field. So particularly for students like myself who are more, let's say, work-oriented than academic-oriented per se, it's a fantastic way to boost your grades up and give yourself a bit of a bump while doing something that you actually probably enjoy more than sitting in class and listening to a lecture. So it's a fantastic way to kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yes, amazing. I mean, this is awesome. So I'm kind of wondering, students watching these podcasts will be thinking, am I an ideal student? Am I an ideal candidate to work at Spark or any institutional student enterprise? So can you tell our listeners or viewers if they are ideal students or who is an ideal student to work at an institutional student enterprise like Spark? And do we have, in future, are we going to, does SLC have the ability or the prospect to create more institutional student enterprises like Spark?
Yeah, so I can take the first part of that question, just as, if you are a student listening to this and you wonder, like, hey, is that something that's for me? I will say it's not for everyone. We've had students in the past that have come and work for us that has said flat out to us, like, this is more responsibility than I was expecting, or the amount of work here and the amount of pressure that is generated in this environment is I'm not prepared for that. And so to us, that's a win in the sense that if you found out something about yourself as a student, that's positive for us. But yeah, I guess like to sort of back up a little bit and talk about a little bit more of our purpose, which will kind of tie in. Really one of the big things that the Innovation Hub and subsequently student enterprises aimed at doing is building soft skills. So we want to build the environments where a student perhaps is learning the technical skills or the hard skills in the classroom. So they're getting, advertising students are learning the basics of advertising, learning the fundamentals in that, and being able to sort of practice some of that practically. But really the goal of sort of like our community-based innovation department is to help build that experience where students can explore skills like collaboration, reflection, critical thinking, even entrepreneurship as a skill. So really that's sort of what we look for. And as we've found with students that have come in and really taken to the position and made the most out of it, they're the students who always want to do extra. They're always there being proactive. But it's also students who can communicate. I think we get asked the question all the time of like, well, who is your ideal candidate, for a position, like things like that. And to us, it's always communication. Communication ends up being one of the biggest things, that if you can communicate, the fact that if something's gotten dropped or if there's, something that's fallen off somebody's to-do list and it's now like we're coming to a point where we're asking where it is, and if it's done, then the students who communicate, even if there is something that's not ideal, the students who communicate are always the ones who we can really get the best experience into.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off of that, having talked with other like student enterprise models outside of the college, even within the college, the students that get the most out of it, like Steve said, it's largely to do with attitude and just a willingness to like fully seize the opportunity that's in front of them. I know like at Spark, a number of our graduates have moved on and like immediately stepped into some really cool jobs. One of the highlight stories that I heard while talking with the head of student enterprise at Pace University in the States, who's really a leader in this area of independent student enterprises. She was saying they had a student who got hired on the spot at Morgan Stanley, like a massive firm down in the States, because of her practical experience working within one of these student enterprises and just having to navigate and deal with the realities of working and leadership. This student was able to speak to specific examples of, yeah, this is what I did in this situation, this is what I did in that situation. Really taking to it and trying to get as much out of it paid off for her in spades. And we've seen the same here at Spark. So like myself being a student, I'd say anyone who wants to apply, like if this is an opportunity that excites you, come in with the attitude that you're going to seize it and make it your own, because yeah, it's a lot more work on top of your course load, but the payoff afterwards like far surpasses like your typical student job that you'd have at college. And then to your second point, going back to the question you had earlier, like what is the college doing, or are we trying to build more? What's happening? We're actively exploring what can be done. Now, however much Steve and I would love to be here and say, yes, we're doing all these things, it's coming to you in January. Unfortunately, the college is a public institution. It's very bureaucratic, things are slow, and there's a lot of things that we are also having to learn in regards to like, oh, how do the finances work from IT side? How does data protection work? So we're trying to navigate all of that. We do have some concepts that we're trying to work around and see if they can become more viable. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I think the big thing to consider there too is that a student enterprise can be any type of business that you can imagine. You could almost create a student enterprise out of. So with the amount of variables that there are to that, it can be a fairly complex discussion. And so, it seems like every time we talk about this, there's another idea of, could we go to the music and digital media and create a record label? Could we go to to the game design program and make a game development house? What could we do, right? And so what we can say is that there's we have had conversations with people in leadership positions, and there is an appetite for this. So of course it's tough to say with any certainty that yes, we're building more, and yes, we want to innovate in this area, but I think that's the bottom line, is that there's an appetite, and we've been able to I won't say Gerhard's done an amazing job at sort of proving potential viability of that. So
yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, entrepreneurship is an extreme sport, so it's not easy to navigate the terrain. Like a lot of you have to navigate a lot of things to to be able to reach your goal. So I would also want to ask if I know you've touched a little bit on the benefits to students learn collaborative skills and communication skills and leadership skills. Is there any more benefits or specific things you think the students will benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking for other general benefits and positives about sort of engaging in a student enterprise, I can say, the biggest one to me is that, people in our department, we're the Innovation and Business Engagement department, has no end to network. So a lot of what we do is we are connected and constantly engaging with some of the biggest institutions in our area in Ontario. And so often, the people who perform well in a student enterprise, you get to perform and show your ability to somebody who's really well connected. And so it's not uncommon for our industry partners to come and say, hey, I've got this opportunity. Do you have the right student for this? Or do you have someone who's graduating who would take to this and be really interested? And and to me, whenever I get asked that question, it's okay, I've got 3 people that come to mind right away. I've got a few that I know have graduated. I've got to me personally, I go back to my Rolodex of internally of who's gone through a student enterprise, who have I worked with at Spark that would be good for this opportunity. So it's almost in a way setting yourself up so that the jobs can come to you. That's obviously not a guarantee, but it's definitely happened, right? So, and I think the other benefit of that too is you're going to find out things about yourself when you do this, right? And when you're working here. And so we've had students who come in and said, oh, I want to start my own advertising agency, so I wanted to come here and work here and see what it's like. And we've had students who kind of said, yeah, I want to start my own business, but after doing this, they think maybe I don't want to start my own business, or now that I see everything involved, is that something and so it's often in creative industries where somebody will say, because photography is on the top of my mind. So we often have students from graphic design and from other creative programs who are interested in photography. So I've had students that have come and said, I want to start my own photography business. And then we get working through it, and they see, if you're running your own business in photography, a third of your time is going to be doing photography, and the other 2/3 of your time is going to be doing administrative work, trying to get clients, building your portfolio, doing all of the work that's associated with that, answering emails. And so exposing them to that, you do find out a lot about yourself and what your goals are. And I think I've had other stories of people saying, yeah, I want to go and work at an agency in Toronto. And so it was 2 years ago. It was trying to think about when, but we had a group of students that we went and did a tour of agencies in Toronto to go and see what is that environment like. And we had one student that was, it was clear to her at the beginning that her goal was to go and work and be successful at an agency in Toronto. And after doing that, she said, you know what, I don't know, maybe I'm going to start my own thing instead. So she then was one that didn't want to, didn't know if she wanted to start her own business. And then through through the experience of working at Spark, she decided, hey, you know, starting my own thing and this entrepreneurship thing could really be for me, right? So it gives a testing ground, right? Because I mean, for one, you've got, you know, when you look at employability as a topic, you've got, you know, employability from a personal standpoint as a student, like, are you employable, or where do you want to work? And then you've got the other side of that of employers saying, like, do I want you to work for me? And so you get to sort of test out that and sort of see kind of like what are your skills really, and you know, so oftentimes people think that their skills are one thing, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, you know, you think you're really good at one thing until you get the opportunity to try, and you know, you might be really good at it, but you might hate it, right? And so it's just one of those, I think, really beneficial environments to be in, where you just sort of, you know, you get to learn a lot about yourself.
Thank you so much, Steve, for highlighting that. So I will also ask, Gerhard mentioned something about applying. So if I'm a student and I want to start a business, how do I apply, and where do I apply?
And to work at Spark or for student enterprise?
For a student enterprise, yes.
So right now, based off the discussions we've had, as it currently stands, the college is not really set up to do independent student enterprises. So I'm not saying no, never. It's just right now, based on the way the system's set up, based on the way the college does its finances, it's not really a possibility. That being said, so the student enterprise, independent student enterprise, that's kind of on the institutional side, we are having conversations with a couple different departments or programs within the college that have expressed interest, and we're working through that. And similar to what you'd get in a let's say like Shark Tank, or you know, a business incubator, we have to, you know, okay, what's your business model? We have to prove concept. We need, like, we take a very measured, strategic approach to it, so that to minimize our risk of failure, because whether it's an independent enterprise or an institutional enterprise, we don't want to see any of them fail. So we try to give everyone the best chance of success. Now, that being said, if you are a student and you have entrepreneurial aspirations and you want to start your own business and you want to start it now, talk to the School of Business. A lot of the profs there are very well connected and have a lot of experience. If you want more formal support, like Queens, their DDQIC program, there is set up to help anyone who's got entrepreneurial aspirations take something from ideation to, like, now you're walking out the door with a functioning business, and it's up to you to make sure it's still running and that you're going. So it can really go either way. Steve would know more of the details on that than I myself.
Yeah, I think you know, if you're a student, honestly, I think the best way right now, given where we're at, you know, a lot of this is like where we are right now is it's an extension of the research. You know, like, we're extending the research that Gerhard has already done. So we're really looking at you know, how could this work? So I think the best way, if you're a student who is interested in getting exposed more to this, or exposed to the concept, helping out, I think the best way and lowest barrier for kind of like getting involved is really through Enactus. So Enactus SLC is a volunteer group that basically does, you know, they come up with projects, you know, that help and support the community and things like that. So it might be, you know, helping a business start up a website, or a not-for-profit that needs help collecting, like, the food bank. I'm not sure if anyone saw it, like the Halloween harvest, that was an Enactus initiative. But that's one of the best ways to just get involved, so that you're where we are when we're trying to figure all this stuff out. You know, Spark does take volunteers occasionally. The conditions have to be right and things like that for us to be able to do that. But I would say my advice to anyone, it's not just in this, but if you want to get somewhere with something, just be there. That's my advice to anyone. And so I would say the best and easiest way to do that at this very moment is to go and volunteer with the Enactus team.
So thank you so much. Absolutely. So you can, if you are watching us today or listening to us today and you want to get involved, you are an entrepreneur at heart, you can get involved with Enactus. Enactus is a club at SLC, and you can join on your SLC, and you can register to join on Enactus, right?
Yeah,
So do you know their meeting days?
You can find more information at enactuslc.ca.
Thank you. And that leads me to the next question. So I was just thinking, what do you think will be the benefits of institutional student enterprises at organizations like SLC?
Yeah, so I think there's the benefits to the students, which we've already talked about. And the nice thing with an institutional student enterprise is you're like, the possibilities, as Steve said, are endless. Like we could have a cooking student, like we could have basically a restaurant. We could do like mini investment company. Like it's basically the sky's the limit. Like as creative as we want to be, theoretically, like you can build whatever you want. So there's the benefits to the students, which you already discussed. There's benefits to the college as well. So any education, like for the educational institution, students that work at student enterprises, both they typically have higher GPAs, but also it does a fantastic job at actually increasing student retention. So I wasn't able to, student enterprise has been around at St. Lawrence for actually several decades. However, we haven't been paying attention, so we don't have the internal research to say, yes, it increases retention by X percentage or that percentage, but there's enough research around this topic out in the world, like North America. I think there's some also done in Australia that shows a significant benefit, like a pretty good increase in student retention. So beyond establishing additional revenue streams for the college, student enterprises really help students stay at the school and not just get bored and drop out, or any of these myriad of reasons is why students would leave their education. It allows them to stay, make a bit of income, which is a good thing and something that research shows is wanted by a large number of students, to have some supplemental income while they're in school. And it keeps them sticking around longer. So for a college, or an institution, yeah, you can make a little bit more money. At best, you're breaking even with your student enterprises. You're not making a ton of money off of it. But it keeps students around. So in that way, you're making money because you're not having as much churn or students coming in, doing a year of a 3-year program and then disappearing because they decide it's not for them for whatever reason. Whereas if you can get them in a student enterprise, they'll stick around, they'll make it through. They're far more likely to have a positive experience of the college. I know the colleges don't have it, but like if you were to look at a university, for example, the Queen's Alma Mater Society, they're a fundraising machine. So the college, if we wanted to do something similar, student enterprise is a way to build those positive experiences where graduates and alumni could give back to the college, and it just becomes a positive feedback where people go out, they're happy, they kick a little bit more back, we build a little bit more, and it just keeps going back and forth.
Yeah, and I think the retention, that's a great aspect of it and benefit from like the institutional perspective. But I mean, we've also seen even with attraction, like attracting students, and so we've got a student right now on our team who's international and was knew she wanted to come to Canada, but she looked at a lot of different post-secondary institutions, and the innovative like learning platform of a student enterprise is what she finally made her decision on, and so we can see that when we do kind of like invest more in these like innovative learning formats, our offering as a whole becomes a lot more attractive to new students. So that's a big piece of it. We've also seen as well, like we've taken on high school students on our team as doing placements and things like that. So in the scenarios where that's happened, it wouldn't be uncommon for you know, a student who's volunteered or done their like high school placement with us to come and enroll and to, because they've been exposed to the environment, they've been exposed to, you know, really exciting aspect of what St. Lawrence, what the culture at St. Lawrence College really is.
Yeah, and I think continuing that retention thing, we've seen that it also has it has positive results for faculty as well. Because I mean, shocker, your professors and teachers, we don't just like put them back in the closet and plug them in until the next class. A lot of them, particularly at colleges, are more practically minded, want to get involved in ways that help provide more opportunities for students. And one of the things that we're seeing a lot in the conversations we're having internally within colleges, a lot of it's very faculty driven of, you know, this person within this department or this head of this center coming to us and saying, hey, I want to be able to do more. Student enterprise seems to be the way that I want to approach it. Can we have a conversation and see what we can do? So hopefully as this continues to grow, we'll start to see more either professors or faculty members or administrators come with ideas that can provide more value to the students, and it gives them something beyond just lecturing, marking, that they can look forward to building something positive that they can look back on and say, yeah, I was a part of that. I helped impact more students beyond just like, you know, handing out quizzes or tests and hoping that it sticks with the students that you're lecturing.
Yeah, absolutely. I really look forward to that because most people learn by doing rather than by, you know, just listening to lectures and all that. But I've also I found it interesting that in SLC, most of our courses are very practical. Like most of them are hands-on. So it will be amazing to see like having program related enterprises. I don't know if that's what to call it, right? Where students will be more engaged and be more practical in, you know, in learning what they have been taught.
Yeah, for sure. And it also, like, in doing that, it also builds their self-confidence, because it's like, I know I've experienced this. Like, I remember years ago when I was at St. Lawrence for the first time for the marketing diploma, I did an assignment and got a good grade on it. And the only comment was, see me after class, from the prof. Is like, okay, so I got a good grade, so this is not going to hopefully be a bad conversation. But he's like, this was so well done, you could sell it. Like, you could basically take what you did for this project, you'd have to expand on it, but it's a service you could sell. And I didn't have the confidence to be like, yeah, I can do this. I was like, oh, okay, I think he's just making me feel good, but I don't know if I can do it. Whereas, you know, once you get out in the workforce and you start doing it, you realize that you can do what you can. You have what it takes. You can do it. When someone says, yeah, you could sell this. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You need to have the confidence. And the student enterprise is a way where, without needing to graduate and then find a job and then finally find out that, yeah, I actually have what it takes.
Yeah.
Why not find it out in first year that, A, I like this, and B, man, I'm good at this. Like, I can, like, you know, I set my sights a little higher now that I know that, like, I'm actually really good at woodworking or social media, or, you know, pick your field.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gerhard and Steve. I just have one question and we'll be done. So can you tell me the food you really love and the food you will banish? One question for you.
Food. Oh, I wasn't prepared for this. Yeah. I don't know. I think food is one of those things that's so often tied to a mood or an atmosphere, right? And you know, to me, it's like I always had such a hard time with this question, because I often think of, you know, an activity or like something that food gets tied to, right? So to me, I love beer, I love a pub atmosphere, so I love wings, right? Like, that's one atmosphere for me. But I would say, like, wings is one of those things that, like, I often crave and often kind of like come back to, that I'm like, yes, I haven't had wings in a while, so I need to go, you know, to the Loyal Oarsman or to, you know, to somewhere to get that atmosphere. But but yeah, so it was like a food you love and a food you hate kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe Garrett can go with his food he likes and then we'll do the food we hate. Give me a second to think about that.
I think going off Steve's direction is like, for me, when I think of like food I like right now, it's not so much like, oh, like I really want this kind of food. For me, it's maybe it's because of the pandemic and I'm an extrovert and been like locked up for way too long. For me right now, like, I think what would make me happiest would be like good barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Good barbecue, like good meat on the grill, veggies, have friends over, a big party, beers, like, you know, like it's the food, but it's everything else that comes along with it.
Exactly. Yeah, I get that. So
yeah, and then food I hate would be shepherd's pie. That can just get like tipped right into the garbage.
No.
I'm done. No way.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my wife feels the same. So like we don't allow it in the house.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I don't know. I can't even think. Like, I'll try just about anything. But I mean, I don't know. I tried, I think, octopus once, and you know, I would say I probably wouldn't order that every day, kind of thing. But yeah, still, I wouldn't say I hated it. I just probably wouldn't have it.
I love octopus.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get you to try balut.
Oh yeah.
For those of you that don't know, balut is I think it's like a fertilized egg that's been allowed to sit for way too long, and then you basically like drink it and eat it back.
Ew.
Apparently, it's a Filipino delicacy, but
oh man,
I don't have the courage to try that.
Yeah, that's adventurous.
No way. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much, Gerhard, for joining us in this podcast. And for our viewers and listeners, I want you to tell us your favorite food and the food you would banish. And look out for your prizes. I'm going to select one person that will win a prize for all our viewers and listeners. Don't forget to follow us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts on The Voice Podcast, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook on SA Voice Podcast. Thank you, everyone, and bye.